everyone, Draco Magnius here for our very last lesson ever. I mean, unless another series has a spell book like this so I can teach you things about magic and other such lore bits. But unfortunately, otherwise, this is our very last lesson. And you've made it all the way here. Soon you will all be expert wizards, and possibly sages if you do the trials. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin. In this lesson, we go over the last spells we've learned, Cloud Sweepers, and the last two stories that we have here. Starting with Thunderstorm. Before we jump in, I'd like to mention, just me personally, I find it amusing that the Cloudburst spell is directly next to Thunderstorm because when it rains, there's also thunder and lightning, and Thunderstorm's a lightning spell. I just thought that was a neat little thing I'd bring up now. But let's get started in earnest. Summon a terrifying tempest that splits the sky in twain. No wizard should go into battle without first having mastered this spell, which is kind of awkward because we learned it at the end of the game. But I digress. Not only does the fearsome power of the storm cause damage to your enemies, but it can also blow them away to a safe distance. Care must be taken, of course, to ensure that no innocent bystanders are caught up in the chaos. But now, allow me to show you how to draw this supposedly invaluable rune that you shouldn't go into battle without. Now that we're at the end. I'm still bitter about that. Alright, so we're starting, of course, with Thunderstorm, which you just draw a lightning bolt, and then strike through it. Well, it should be a straight line. I kind of dipped there at the end, but you get what I mean. Alright, so I'll draw it once again slowly. And now we do it quickly. Alright, and now we cover our next spell, which is our last offensive spell and our most powerful one. Alright, next up is the mighty Astra spell. Cast a spell known only to legend. It is said that only those in possession of a certain all-surpassing wand are capable of casting this ancient spell. Indeed, only one wizard in history is believed to have performed it successfully. Sadly, the name of that lord amongst sages has long since been lost to the mists of time. But we know it's Gallus, or Doodle-Doo, as I prefer to call him, and also now there's two, Oliver. But, with all that said and done, allow me to show you how to cast the rune for this spell that you probably won't be able to cast because you don't have Astra lying around, but that's neither here nor there. Alright, this one's a little more complicated than our usual spells. I guess the best way to describe it is draw a 2 that's diagonal, and then, through the 2, we're going to draw a crank. Like I said, this one's a bit complicated to draw, so you might have to practice a little bit with this one. So I'll do that slowly once again. I guess, diagonal 2, and then in it, the crank. This one's probably going to be the hardest one for me to draw fast, and I'm kind of doing it wrong slowly, but I'm going to give it a go. Like I said, this is a spell that you can only use with Astra, so you're probably not going to be drawing it quite as often. Okay. Now I've already fluffed it up. Yeah, that one still seemed off. See what I mean? This one's so complicated, even I can't draw it correctly. Alright, we'll give it one more go. Although, actually, that one was pretty on the nose. That one's so complicated, it's probably best if you just continue to cast it at a slower rate. That's why it takes so long in the game for you to cast it, after all. But with that all said and done, we move on to spell number 3 for the day. Alright, and this is the first of our post-game spells, the Ashes of Resurrection. Before we begin going with the description, I'd like to mention a few things. You'll notice this page is black and white, but I suppose you could say inverted for the Astra and the Evenstar spells. You'll also notice it has Nozigan up in the corner there. So I'm going to give you a moment to translate this on your own. Hopefully you have your sheet that says what the runes are. Otherwise, this is going to be incredibly tough for you to translate, so I'm going to zoom in so you have a better look. And I will give you 10 seconds before I tell you the answer. Starting now. Alright, and your time is now up. It says forbidden, which the Ashes of Resurrection spell is of course forbidden. There's a giant X over it as well to once again emphasize forbidden spell. I mean, I'm still going to teach it to you because, I mean, what kind of teacher would I be if I didn't teach you everything you needed to know, regardless of whether it was forbidden or not? I mean, really. Another thing to note while we're looking at this little meta comment, in fact, you'll notice that unlike the other runes that we can't draw and actually use in the game, this one uses a color scheme that seems like they wanted you to cast it at some point. Notice how the black and red lines look like the black and red lines on Mornstar, as opposed to the ones on, say, Werefish, let's say. In fact, I'll look it up just to see if I'm BSing, because I don't think I am. Actually, Loaf of Life works too. In a spell that we don't use in the game, it's more of a brown line, the red line, and the black line seems a little faded. This spell, that is not the case. This leads me to believe, at the very least, that at some point they were planning on putting Ashes of Resurrection in the game, but they decided maybe that was a little too overpowered, considering, I mean, you already had the ability to buy Phoenix Downs, and Phoenix Tears, and the Phoenix Breath, and from a lore standpoint it just made sense, given what the spell does and the stories surrounding it, that it should be forbidden. Or maybe I'm wrong and you actually can cast this spell, and some of the information I've looked up is a bit outdated. Or maybe it just doesn't work all the time, maybe it fails. We'll have to see. But with all of that said and done, let's jump into the actual description. Defy the sacred rules of nature and resurrect the dead. A forbidden spell, due to its immense power, it is extremely difficult to cast, and drawing its rune is no guarantee of success, even under optimal conditions. Though it is indeed capable of bringing the dead back to life, the act comes at a terrible price to the caster. You simply have no idea what you could lose should you attempt to cast this spell. Again, forbidden for a reason! Though Evenstar isn't forbidden. They warn you it's dangerous to cast Evenstar in the book, but they don't say per se that it is forbidden, which I find a little odd, but that's neither here nor there. Forbidden spell, do not cast. So let me show you how to cast it. Alright, now before we get started, again, just want to make sure you all signed the waiver, correct? I don't want your next of kin suing me if you end up dead after casting Ashes of Resurrection. I mean it. And tell them not to cast it either. I mean, they would have had to seen you have cast it to try it themselves, but again, no lawsuits. I warned you, and there's a waiver that should have been signed. If you hadn't signed it, that's your fault. Anyway, with disclaimer out of the way, let's begin. I guess the best way to describe the black line in this is you're going to be drawing yourself a falling down P shape with a little notch at the end of it. And then you draw, let's say, a diagonally upside down L. These are the complicated runes, folks. That's why I have to make the way I describe them. I try to make them simple, but it's kind of hard with the shapes you're given. If you can think of something better, put it in the comments, and help your fellow classmates. Alright, so again, slowly now. Diagonally falling P with the notch. Upside down, diagonal L. And now quickly. Alright, with that all said and done, we move on to... Oh gosh, is it already the final spell? You know, I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm going to check the notes to make 100% certain we're on the right track. Yes! We're on to our final spell for the day! That was fast. Alright, I'll see you in just a moment. Alright, our last spell that we are ever covering is Nyx. Notice, like I said about the Astra spell, and I said about the Ashes of Resurrection spell, rather, that the spells we cannot cast in the game have a brown line, and like a slightly darker black line. We have that here. Nyx is uncastable in the game. I suppose it's technically because Cloudburst basically does the same thing, and it doesn't really matter to me in the game per se, because I have a bunch of Nyx Nashers on various familiars, so Nyx just sort of happens sometimes. But without further ado, let's get on with it. Render a rival wizard incapable of casting spells or familiars. It works on either. Nyx nullifies an enemy's magical power, rendering him unable to cast spells, a wizard's worst nightmare. Be aware, however, that such a powerful spell requires its caster to have great magical ability. Should two wizards attempt to nyx each other during battle, it is said that fortune favors the one with the purest heart. Alright, and with that I'll show you how to use this spell to hopefully disarm your magical opponent before they can hit you with anything serious. Alright, so for Nyx, what you're going to want to do is you're going to draw, I guess the best way to describe it would be a staff, like you would hold to cast spells, but like diagonal, like you're going to strike someone over the head with it. And then after doing that, we draw V near the bottom of the staff. So I'll do that one more time slowly. Draw your staff, and about here, draw the V. And now, quicker. This one was probably one of the easier runes to draw for you. And that's pretty good. Like I said, you're probably going to get a lot of use out of it if you're battling other wizards. Don't battle anyone in the class right now. I'm watching you. Alright. With that settled, and with all that said and done, ladies and gentlemen, we are done casting spells for our class today. And like I've been saying for a while, I'm really sad about that. But what needs to be done is done. We still have other things to go over. There's lore bits, and well, actually, yeah, that's the best way to describe it. There's lore bits left. So I'm going to meet you at page 129 of The Wizard's Companion to talk a bit about Cloud Sweepers before our first story. I will see you all in just a moment. Teachings for Aspiring Wizards, number 5. Means of Transportation, Part 1. Ironically, we did this after Part 2, because this is really the only time I had to talk about Cloud Sweepers, really. None of it seemed like a good time to cover it any other area. I mean, I suppose we could have covered it after we got the spell Broom Broom, and it mentions Cloud Sweepers, but Anyway, non-wizards have long been forced to rely upon vehicles to carry them to their destinations. This section aims to introduce some of the more common modes of transportation currently in use. All wizards are advised to read the information contained herein, for one cannot predict when circumstances, nixing, dismemberment, wand loss, to name but 3, might necessitate the use of such infernal contraptions as those here described. Cloud Sweepers. Here's a little diagram. I have a saddle for you to sit in, a little drive wheel there, some wings, and the broom part of it. Wizards, of course, do not require magical assistance to fly through the air. Indeed, in times gone by, wizards would have not countenance traveled by any other means than broom. Alas, the age has changed, and now young wizards insist on using half-magical, half-mechanical contraptions known as Cloud Sweepers. Cloud Sweepers require only the merest dash of magic to get them off of the ground, meaning that inexperienced magic users, and even non-wizards, are able to ride them with gay abandon. Gay being used here, and the original term for the word, as happy, but I digress. To give credit where it's due, certain enterprising engineers have gone so far as to attach guns to the front of their cloud sweepers, allowing them to attack enemies while in mid-air, a recognized limitation of the traditional wizard's broom. Wow, the person who wrote this was pretentious as hell. Look, I think it's wonderful when people merge magic and technology. Technology is powerful, and so is magic. When we combine the two things, it makes a greater thing in general. But whoever wrote this was clearly a traditionalist. But I digress. With this section done, we can now move on to our very first story that we'll be covering in today's lesson. The 10th tale, The Flying Machine. The Dreamer. There once was a boy who spent every day in a daze, dreaming of soaring through the skies. One might say he had his head in the clouds. As a young child, he was always asking wizards to make him float for a few moments, a delightful experience. But he himself was no good at magic. Since he always hated lessons of all kinds, there really was no hope of him becoming a wizard. But still, he dreamed of being able to fly. Nothing could make him give up on his dreams. One day, the boy took a journey to another world. There was a tunnel that connected the two worlds in those days, you see, and people were able to travel between them quite easily. Now, the boy knew that there was no such thing as magic in the other world, meaning that no one there was able to fly. He had, however, heard rumors about a painter who lived there and also dreamed of taking to the skies, just like he did. As soon as he arrived in the other world, the boy headed straight for this painter's house. But when he got there was no one home. Feeling rather bold, the boy decided to take a look around for himself. The first thing he saw upon entering the painter's house was a magnificent sketch, a drawing of a strange machine that was attached to something that spun around very quickly. There was no doubt about it. This was a machine that could fly! What a shame, thought that boy, that in my world, magic is so common that no one bothers inventing things like this. Flushed with excitement, the boy took to tracing of the painter's sketch and took it with him back to his own world. After working hard for several years, the boy finished building the machine in the sketch, and for the first time ever, he was able to fly. Why, this is the happiest moments of my life, thought the boy with a big grin. Even though it was only for a few seconds at a time, he was finally able to live his dream. The Sage and the Young Wizard. A short while after he had finished building the painter's flying machine, a sage visited the boy and spoke to him very grandly. "You must dispose of all knowledge gleaned from that other world." The boy was shocked. "But why?" he asked. "This machine lets me soar through the skies. It's what I've always wanted."
"Using a machine to achieve something that should only be achieved through using magic is akin to poisoning this world."
"Poison? Why is it like poison?"
"Magic may only be used by those who possess a pure heart, who have undergone the proper training. Wizards borrow some of nature's power and use it to humans' benefit. Only those with a pure heart, when uncorrupted by evil, are able to do this. Using machines to triumph over nature is not the behavior of the pure-hearted."
Now, what the sage meant to say was that anyone could use a machine to manipulate nature, even the untrained and the evil. Machines gave ordinary humans powers that only gods and wizards should have. Though it hurt to admit it, the boy knew that what the sage had said was true, and very reluctantly handed over his tracing of the painter's sketch. As he did so, however, a young wizard who had been watching them interjected. "Esteemed sage, wasn't magic originally intended to make our lives easier? If machines achieve the same effect,
Why shouldn't we use them?
Because machines can be used by the wrong people for the wrong reasons, replied the sage impatiently.
But the young wizard was undeterred. I have been to the other world, and I know how things work there. They have people called scientists. They're the ones who make the machines. And they work miracles! They are capable of mixing iron with other rare metals to create things called alloys, which are strong enough to plow even the rockiest of soil. You cannot deny that farmers' lives are much easier as a result.
Surely you do not believe that all scientists seek to improve people's lives?
The sage snapped back.
Do you not think, perhaps, that some of them wish to use their machines to control people, to bend them to their will?
The young wizard was speechless for a moment, but then he soon found his tongue again. Couldn't the same be said for magic? Aren't there some people who seek to use magic to increase their own influence? The boy tried listening to the conversation between the sage and the young wizard, but they used a lot of difficult words that he had trouble following. All he wanted to do, after all, was fly. A dream come true. In the years that followed, more and more people made visits to the other world. They would become increasingly surprised and impressed by the machines they saw there. They would rush back to their own world to tell people all about them. The sages realized that something must be done, because technology from the other world was threatening to ruin the balance of their own. They decided to seal the tunnel to the other world, to ensure that the place of magic within society was never threatened again. Now, visiting the other world was not completely forbidden. Why, powerful wizards could cast the spell known as Gateway, and travel to the other world anytime they pleased. When the boy, who was a young man now, heard about what the sages had done, he was terribly disappointed. Dash it all, he thought. Now I'll never be able to visit the other world again. And yet he still dreamed of flying. If anything, he dreamed of it more than ever. Having thought about it every day for a long time, he eventually had an idea. What if I build a flying machine that's powered by magic? Surely the sages couldn't object to that. I shall make it magical, but I shall jolly well build it and fly it as I like. Many months of hard work later, the young man's magical flying machine was complete. Its magical power had been provided by, yes, you've guessed it, the young wizard who had the argument with the sage all those years ago. Once the final touches had been applied, it was time for a test flight. The young man straddled his machine and took off into the sky. The machine's wings flapped gently as it glided through the air, and its magically enchanted engine allowed him to stay in the sky for several hours. Midway through the test flight, he looked down. The sheep in the fields were as small as dormice, and he could see the waves of the sea in the distance glinting in the morning sun. I don't think anyone alive has ever felt happier, thought the young man with glee. Indeed, he too was captivated by the scenery to spare a thought for the effect his new magical machine would have on the world. Had he known what impact it would have, you can be sure he would not have been quite so elated. See, I feel like that last line was written by the sage in particular, who had the argument. Because you could argue, yeah, introducing machines into this magical world where only the pure-hearted can cast magic may have caused a war, or two, or several. But I saw in that flashback to Bellicosia, those people were using freaking magic to attack people. So they weren't exactly pure-hearted, those soldiers. Now, were they? Also, Shadar, the White Witch. We have multiple examples of evil magic being used. They have nowhere to stand on that argument. Nowhere. I mean, granted, you could say, well, Lucian and Cassiopeia, or Cassiopeia, however you want to say it, they were pure-hearted at first. They believed they could help the world with their magic, but then magic was used for evil. They became evil. So, you don't really have ground to stand on. Anything can be used for good or evil dependent on who's using it. I agree with that young wizard. And I think the end of this story is flawed. This boy was just trying to achieve his dreams. What's so wrong about that? But anyway, let's move on to our next story, because we have one last story to cover. The 12th and final tale. The Young Woman's Journal. An old traveler stood on a street corner, telling a crowd of people all about his adventures. The crowd enjoyed listening to his tales, and one of them asked him, "What's the most incredible thing you have ever seen?" The old traveler thought for a while and answered, "Let me tell you about a notebook I found. I was traveling through some truly inhospitable terrain, a jungle so thick that no light passed through its canopy, located in the foothills of a steep mountain range. I was certain that I was the first human to set foot in the place, until I came upon a notebook. Imagine my surprise when I looked inside and saw that it was a young girl's journal. I became obsessed with it. I couldn't stop thinking about this little girl and what happened to her. Listen to these entries. Did you ever hear of a tale so wondrous as hers?" "I wonder where you've gone. I've been looking for you all this time, but I can't find you anywhere. Passing through a village today, I heard some people talking about you. They described you a little differently from what I remember, but it was definitely you. They said you were heading north, so that's where I shall go too." "I don't believe it. They say you've thrown yourself into some kind of swamp, something called the Miasma Marshes. Why would you do such a thing? What am I going to do now?" "I finally found someone who could tell me about these Miasma Marshes. It doesn't sound good. It seems that those who gaze at the marshes are lured towards them by the evil spirits who reside there. They prey on those who've been overcome by despair and compel them to throw themselves in. Is that what happened to you?" "I finally understand. The mystery of the Miasma Marshes. Well, I know what I have to do. Last night, a traveling wizard told me that people in this world share a soul with a person in another world. These people are called soulmates. According to him, soulmates' lives are intertwined and affect each other. By throwing themselves into the Miasma Marshes, however, people can cut the bond that links them to their soulmates, allowing their hearts to be consumed by evil. Those who have done so are beyond redemption. Even releasing the evil from their hearts and recovering them to their soulmate does not bring back the person they once were. He told me something else as well. Something important. I need some time to think about what to do next." "It is decided. I must become a wizard. It is the only way I can save you. It has been several years since I last wrote in this journal. I am a great sage now, capable of breaching time itself. I've decided to go back and rescue the other you. I'm going to take good care of him, right from the very start. I know I'll never be able to return to this time, but I will not regret this. In the other world, I'll find the floating soul to which you were once connected, and I will absorb it. That soul will then be reborn as my own child. I'm setting off on a journey, a long journey, to acquire the life that I need in order to save you. That is the least I can do for you, after what you did for me. I believe that one day your soul will return, and that we'll meet again. You saved me. You sacrificed everything for me. You gave your life so that I could live mine. I must see you again.
the old traveler had finished reading the journal. The crowd that had assembled before him stood silent for a long while. Before any of them could think what to say, the old traveler turned around and shuffled off to continue his wanderings. But just as he was about to leave town, he looked back at his dumbstruck audience and addressed them once again. The notebook wasn't the only thing I found that day. There was a wand lying next to it, too. I think it must have been hers. And so ends the final tale that we had to cover. I was genuinely crying, by the way, during that. It was so touching. Oh, God. I really mean that. I was really bawling. I couldn't control my voices because I was tearing up so much. I need a drink of water. Give me a moment. Okay, I'm back. So, I would like to say that I've really enjoyed doing these lessons. I always enjoy when a Let's Playing series gives me an opportunity to do a side thing alongside it. I may not have enjoyed the story of Drakengard 2, but I thoroughly enjoyed doing Draco's Weapon Corner. I enjoy reading the weapon stories in games. I love when they give you extra stuff like that. But of all the extra things I've done in my various Let's Plays, my favorite thing so far has been these lessons. Maybe I'm still emotional from reading the story, but I genuinely mean this. I've really enjoyed doing these. And the fact that people are watching these, the things that I love to make, really touches me that you would take your time to do this. And maybe like I said, maybe I'm still emotional from reading the story. I'm really sad to see this go, but all things must come to an end. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch these. Thank you for following along to my lessons. And if you share with people, thank you for that as well. I really appreciate it. I'm not the biggest person on YouTube. I get that. I'm probably one of the smallest people with still a decent-sized following. So the fact that you chose me, these lessons that I've worked on, over other things, I really do appreciate it. I appreciate every one of you people who've subscribed to me, who follow me on Twitter or Facebook or any other social media. I mean, I don't have much. I got 3. And I've said thank you a lot now, but I want to hammer it home. Thank you all so much for watching these lessons. I don't know if I'll ever get another opportunity to do something like this. Maybe in Ni no Kuni 2, Revenant Kingdom. But remember, study hard. Take the lessons we've learned from the stories to heart. And maybe you can use the other lessons in Magic and other stuff too, if you decide to play this game, to appreciate the lore just a little bit more. So long.